Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too as we continue to live, laugh, love, learn, linger, and live the life we love. Today's PowerPoint presentation is called The Beauty and Rigors of Initiation. So what I take away from that is enlightenment is like the pole star, true north, right? If you've ever seen it, it stays fixed in the sky if you're above the equator in the northern hemisphere. Below the hemisphere, southern hemisphere, you can't see it at all. But for those of us who are living north of the equator, it becomes a tried and true point from which you can navigate. You can triangulate. That stays fixed there. I'm here, and this is where I want to go. And so millions of navigators through history have been able to attest to its practical and functional effectiveness as using it as a point from which you can get to where you want to go. So to me, that's what the idea of enlightenment is. I don't really know what it is. I have a lot of romantic projections about what it is, but it becomes a point from which I can navigate myself and develop the qualities that helps me lean towards what I believe enlightenment is. Now, I like the models of four: spirituality by the numbers. News is it's really the olds. They tell you what's already happened. But when you travel to the four directions, as if it's in the good red road, the Native American tradition, you begin in the east where the sun comes up. The color is yellow, and the eagle is the totem animal. It flies high and sees far and wide. You travel that path. Then you go to the south, where you have the green growth in the summertime, and the mouse is a totem animal because it sees things up close. It's smaller than the tall grass, so it doesn't have perspective, but it has intimacy. Another good path to travel to. Then you go to the west, where the black bear hibernates, goes into the cave, where you experience dream time and the smoking mirrors of your own self-deception if you're not clear about what's happening. It's another path. And then you can always go to the north, where the ancestors are, the white buffalo, the giveaway, the abundance, where your prayers are sent to the ancestors, and also where the unknown is. Many of the stories say, don't go to the known, don't go to the north if you don't want trouble. And who wants trouble? But of course, most of the time, the protagonists do go. Jung did the same thing with a different mindset. He coined the phrase of thinking, sensation, feeling, intuition. Intuition is like Raja Yoga, like the king or queen that has the overview of the realm. It includes everybody. The feeling nature is like Bhakti Yoga, where your heart has to stay open to the suffering of the people, as well as the joy that can be brought to the people as the patron of the arts. The thinking part of you is like the Jnana Yoga, the wise man or the wise woman that sees clearly, has a vision, passes it on to the king and queen to make a decision. And the sensation part is like the action-oriented part of yourself, like the warrior. You have to be really alert in your senses, take in all the information, and then make an accurate and effective, skillful choice. Again, doesn't matter if you go to the tarot. The four suits of the tarot will teach you the same kind of mindset that eventually we'll find in yoga. And the way that the tarot was, you had the pentacle, which was a coin, and it morphs into the diamonds in a modern playing deck. You had the cup, which was the water element, dealt with the heart. And that's why you have the heart card. The sword was the air card, the mind's ability to discriminate and cut through stuff. But in the old days, the sword may have been the vehicle, but as people progress and end up working a lot, then it's the spade that cuts into the earth and turns it over. So that's where the sword becomes the spade card. And then the wand with the trefoil growing out of it, usually a symbol of fire. It has to do with the green fuse that dries everything. So that becomes the club and that court card. Same idea. You can morph all these quaternios into one another. Then, of course, you come to yoga. Of course, yoga says you got to sit still, but it's not about what I call the quietest fantasy, that somehow being still and silent is better than action, because in the world of spirit, being and doing are one. But action is really important. from Chicago, we all love Michael Jordan, what he taught us. Nothing appeases your innermost hunger as putting out the one with all your juice behind it. So you learn what that is to have tremendous work ethic and selflessly devote yourself. And it brings everybody else up on the team. They play better as a result of your energy. And then, of course, you have the bhakti yoga. But the key, of course, is here the gopis, they're all dancing with Krishna in whatever form each one of them envisions God to be. But you don't want a dreamy sentimentalism that's sloppy, because what you realize is God must love the common people because he made so many of them. If you can't find your way to love everybody, even the people who are not in your social class, not in your race, not in your educational genre, background, and so forth, you're not going to do it. So you move eventually to Jnana Yoga. How do you have insight? Well, Varadaranyaka Upanishad says the self is that which has been described as not this and not that. So that's the old model, what they call neti neti. You negate this and you negate that when you're asking the question, who am I? Vichara Atman. And if you can let go of everything that your mind starts to name, which is always a self-reference to something outside of you, whatever you're left with, that's it. That's Jnana Yoga. So you'll end up like a Buddha figure. Buddha was a master putting the reptilian brain on a leash. You learn to watch and to a certain extent control or guide all your knee-jerk reflexes. So your spontaneity doesn't take over completely in terms of unconscious behavior. You're not being driven by forces that you're not aware of. And if you find that calm, I always like the swan in the background because it's an animal that has freedom both in the air, the land, and on water. So that's how you become a Paramahansa or a great swan. And then you have to realize the essence of blaming. That's what neurosis is all about. He did it. Yeah. I did this to my brother. I wrote on the wall and I blamed my brother and did it. So give up putting it on other people and own your own responsibility. Be accountable for what you do. And then ultimately realize that paths sometimes diverge, sometimes paths converge. And when they converge, there's confluence, there's contact. And you'll get more confidence by boldly being able to mold yourself to the environment and be with other people where they are. And that's how we learn to give each other strokes. These games are played outside of awareness as a means of generating familiar, unfortunately, often negative units of recognition. But you don't want to do it from negative attention, right? A stroke is the fundamental unit of social action. A stroke is a unit of recognition where one person recognizes another person either verbally or non-verbally. And in infancy, strokes are essential for survival and come mainly from close physical contact with the primary parent figures. Later, strokes are symbolized by words and gestures. And they know, old hippies, but we know that you can't overlove a child. The more love, coddling, sweetness that you give to them, the better adjusted and successful they are later on. You don't spoil them at all. You love them. Really important. And so remember, look at your anger and your sadness and how do they work in your life. For some people, sadness is what they lead with, but right behind the sadness is how pissed off they are. Other people lead with their anger, but right behind the anger is how sad they are about things. Learn to deal with these emotions. They both have their own ways for coming to closure. What's the way that you do it? But remember, in the end, it's putting it all together. The putting together of the parts of the elements so as to form a whole, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And if you do that, you'll end up remembering my invocation. So raise your kundalini. How do you awaken it? Well, widen your pelvic floor so that your image is as wide as a football field, not as narrow as a broom closet. And then you'll understand where the vitality of your energy is really springing from.